My presentation will be fairly short and much less detailed than some of the other fantastic ones. I guess I just like to draw attention to a few points of the general progress in connectomics in recent years and discuss some potential doubts about their implications. In part, looks like the formatting is a bit different compared to what my initial slides were, but I'd like to draw attention to the impact that machine learning and artificial intelligence more generally has had on connectomics in the past few years. In particular, if we look at some of the earliest work in connectomics, for example, White et al. From 1986, it took about 12 years of specialized human labor to complete the connectome of C. elegans. Nowadays, machine learning has pretty much revolutionized connectomics as a whole and is quickly becoming a foundational technology, empowering pretty much all most recent efforts in the field. This is a visualization of the fluid filling networks developed by Google Brain researchers as well as some other folks, which have been a pretty significant advance in the field in terms of scalability, especially when it comes to the largest and most complex data sets, which are sure to be relevant in the context of any whole brain emulation effort. We are now even targeting millimeter scale data sets of human tissue. This one is a visualization from a recent paper which was able to map out at nanometer scale and provide a dense reconstruction of a single millimeter of human brain tissue. I am personally have been significantly impacted by recent progress in AI. And I have probably short timelines in terms of just how transformative AI can get, even in a short period of time, like 10, 15 years. And I believe that if there is any chance for a whole brain emulation to be competitive and influential in the next years as a paradigm of artificial intelligence before transformative AI is developed, it is likely that it will be significantly accelerated by machine learning for it to have any chance at all. And I would like to draw attention to some potential implications of this fact. In particular, I'm sorry about the presentation. I'm not sure why it's different compared to my initial one.
You can re-edit the extra slides into it later.
Yeah, sure. But I guess this one particular scenario I'd like to highlight was inspired by David's discussion online, and he again highlighted it in his presentation earlier. In particular, it is possible that there is a wide range of scenarios. This is just a single one in which static connectomes prove to be insufficient when it comes to having a high fidelity or a sufficiently detailed reconstruction of a human brain, for example. And it is also possible that the dynamic recordings enabled by BCIs prove also insufficient, and that time-consuming interventional studies turn out to be necessary for the kind of reconstruction that we might want for whole brain emulation. And in such a scenario, it is possible that full fidelity whole brain emulation, as it is usually conceived of as a paradigm of artificial intelligence, is simply infeasible given shortening AI timelines. But it is possible that machine learning generalization, for example, generalizing from a large quantity of static data and maybe some dynamic recordings can allow us to still obtain something that resembles some kind of whole brain emulation adjacent model. Or there might be other paradigms as well. Not necessarily whole brain emulation. One that comes to mind is Guern's brain imitation learning about, for example, GPT-like models trained on neural activity data. And what I'd like to draw attention to is that, at least to me, it is unclear how to reason about this kind of systems. In particular, from a safety point of view, we generally, at least in many discussions, we generally consider whole-brain emulation as a general paradigm of artificial intelligence, as one of the possibly more benign ones, mostly because we assume that a successful whole-brain emulation ensures that the system has pretty much the same motivations and the same cognition that characterizes the original human brain. But it is unclear whether this also applies to the whole spectrum of possible models that are not quite full fidelity whole-brain emulation. And I believe it is important that we develop some principled way to reason about this kind of model, simply because, in my view, it is if whole-brain emulation as a whole is to be relevant in the next years, it is probably this kind of a model that is going to be present in the environment. And when it comes to some things I'd like to see discussion about or something like it, I'd like to have a general operationalization of relevant concepts in the general discussion, a better understanding of some failure modes that might characterize any whole-brain emulation effort. Particularly, I'm interested in the application of machine learning, and so one that comes to mind is the potential error accumulation as part of data collection, data processing, and machine learning-related applications. I'd like to see a better understanding of the implications of failure modes of human cognition. In particular, we know that small changes at a neurophysiological level can lead to significant changes in overall behavior, and it's unclear just how much that impact the implication of whole-brain emulation efforts. And I'd like also to see a better, an improved discussion of ways to reason about different paradigms that are not necessarily whole-brain emulation as usually discussed in terms of fidelity, but that are still relevant, like machine learning augmented whole-brain emulation and such. Yeah. And yeah, thanks for listening.
Thank you. Awesome. We have 1 minute for questions. Yes.
It's kind of a basic question, but you mentioned something called a brain imitation learning.
Yeah.
A hypothetical thing, or is that a thing?
I think it's a paradigm that has been discussed by Guern. It's more of an hypothetical thing. At the moment, I believe part of the issue is that there are no significantly large data sets of neural data when it comes to significance, the scale of the recordings themselves. Although I guess I wanted to discuss it as something that could potentially become relevant in the coming years if true whole-brain emulation turns out to be infeasible. And yeah, I guess the point is that there is a whole range of potential scenarios that do not necessarily have the same implications of true whole-brain emulation, and those seem under-discussed given their relative likelihood compared to the standardly discussed whole-brain emulation scenario.